Today, we're excited to announce the launch of the Kirklees Music Ecosystems Network. This is all part of what we're doing in these 2 days. It's all part of Music City events. So it's a brand new online community for people across the sector, and it's been developed by Music City Events. It's available for over this whole year, and the platform will host a series of workshops, created content and resources to support the creative community across Kirklees, all in celebration of Kirklees Year of Music. We're hoping to make this a really interesting forum. You'll be able to access it via Kirklees Year of Music website. As part of the platform, we're giving the opportunity for artists and bands to perform at a showcase here tomorrow at Lawrence Batley Theatre. All 8 acts selected will play a 20-minute set each, showcasing the very best of talent in Kirklees. The online network will also allow the bands access to the international buyers who will be able to watch their performance on video, which we'll be again announcing in May. And this is all part of the band's Artist Exchange Showcase event that again we're working in partnership with Music City Events with. So to sign up to the Kirklees Music Ecosystems Network, if you go on to Kirklees Year of Music website, which is musicinKirklees.co.uk. So any of you based here in Kirklees and your musicians, get onto the website, follow the link to the Kirklees Music Ecosystems Network. I'll learn this before the next week's out, and sign up. It's going to be good. And we're going to have a lot of stuff going on that will be very useful and will help support and develop your careers. So there you go. All right, I will now invite Dan and Joel to join me at the table so we can kick off with the music publishing seminar.
Hi.
So, I'm joined here by Dan Jones from PRS for Music, stroke MCPS. I forgot to put MCPS there. PRS for Music, and Joel Dipple from Centric Music. Dan is the regional officer and also Music Writers Relationships Manager, and Joel is the Relationships Manager and is one of the main points of contact for artists who sign up to Centric Music. And they're both here to talk all things music publishing. We will start off with the discussion with Dan, who'll give us an overview of copyright, its exploitation, and the royalty income generated from that, and the relationship with PRS for Music as a collection agency. And then we'll move on to the publishing side of it all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 All right. Yeah. Over to you, Dan. Hit us with the collection info.
Okay. So hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Dan Jones and I work for an organisation called PRS Music, which, if you don't know, is an organisation that represents the rights of our members who are songwriters, composers and music publishers in the UK and all around the world. We ensure that our members are paid whenever their songs or compositions that they've written are broadcast on TV, on radio, when they're streamed, downloaded, played in public, performed live, and copied and reproduced. Simply put, if you're a songwriter and the music that you've written is being played live on the radio and you're not a member of PRS Music, or you're not signed up with a publisher such as Centric, then you could be losing out on money that's due to you. essentially like any business in the UK that uses our members' music is required to have a license with us. We collect money from them and pay it out to our members when their music has been used. So copyright-wise, as soon as a songwriter or composer creates a song and puts it in a fixed form or what's called a tangible form, so that could be you can write sheet music, you record it into GarageBand, Logic, or you just sing it to your phone, there is a copyright there, and by default you are the owner of the copyright. There's no real formal way of registering copyright in the UK. You've probably heard this for years and thought it was maybe an old wives' tale, but we still recommend the route of, if you want to prove ownership of a copyright, copy it onto a CD, post it yourself, record the delivery, leave the envelope sealed, and you've got a date stamp document showing that song was in existence on that time. There are more expensive ways. You can register copies with like solicitors. You can, if you're a member of the Musicians Union, they've got a really good free service, and you can like digitally send yourself copies as well. Most of the copyright disputes that we deal with aren't at all related to, oh, this person ripped my song off, like I wrote it, they've just nicked it. Any one point in time, we're dealing with tens of thousands of disputes over basically just songwriters falling out with each other. In terms of it's a really awkward conversation. Me and Joel were talking about this before, about my complete failure to get on with other
Those
people.
Those are your words.
to get on with people in bands. Yeah. And one of the horrible discussions we always used to have to do is about splitting the songwriting, where it's not why you get into writing music, but it's really important you get it nailed down, who wrote the song, what the splits are. I had lots of falling outs with people because I got written out of the songwriting, or we disagreed over how to split it. So it's really important. If you do write songs with people, get that written down. Even just a WhatsApp conversation between yourselves is better than nothing, because years later, when money starts rolling in, people's memory can get a little bit hazy over. So just get something agreed. Again, I'm plugging the MU even though they aren't here.
I was going to say, a band agreement.
They've got like free, if you're a member of the MU, they've got free forms you can download from their website and use. So I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now. Back to copyright. So by default, you are the owner of that copyright. It gives you authority to say how your songs are used or not used. So if you don't want people sampling your music, you don't want a horrible corporation, I know it's video so I won't name some, but you don't want someone using your music on an advert. As a copyright owner, you've got the right to say yes or no to that, and if they still go ahead and use it, you've got the right to sue their ass. Copyright in the UK lasts a lifetime of the songwriter plus 70 years beyond their death. So if you write a song today, you're going to reap the benefits of that song for the rest of your life. Then your next of kin will for at least 70 years beyond that. So that's all well and good knowing all that, but what's the actual benefits of being a copyright owner? So anytime a third party wants to use your music, so a venue, a radio station, a streaming service, strictly speaking, they need to get your permission and they need to pay you a fee. That's very hard to do in practice. Every time someone wanted to stream your song on Spotify can't go to you and say, oh, Joel wants to listen to your music, do you have permission? So basically there's a thing called collective licensing, where all the different songwriters around the world will join a performing rights organisation such as PRS in the UK. We give permission for all our customers to use our members' music, and then we sort out the logistics of making sure the right people get paid. So I think that's pretty much the basics. So, yeah.
Got that pretty covered. Can I just make a point on the sending a CD back to yourself? Number the envelope, and then make sure filed away you've got that number and then the list of tracks on the CD, so you know if you're doing several of these, you know which tracks are on which envelope. I've got a bunch of envelopes of my husband's songs and I've got no idea which songs are on. So I've got about 4 or 5 envelopes of different cassettes and I've got no idea which one's which. Just so you know. All right, Joel.
Yeah, so do you want to ask this question, and feel free to put your hands like what are people's knowledge between sort of like the differences of what a music publisher is in comparison to a record label? So it might be, so by hands not being up, I will assume that it is no. So I'll quickly run through that. So similarly to sort of like what Dan was speaking about, what music publishing about is all about the songwriters. So within the world of music, there's two copyrights that exist. So there are the publishing copyrights and the master copyrights. So the master copyrights, what those are is that recording of that song. So I don't know, let's use Adele as an example and someone like you. So what happened is XL Records got a bunch of cash together to put her into a studio, and XL Recordings then own that recording of that song by Adele. But what XL do not own is anything of the publishing, because what the publishing is, as sort of Dan has spoken about, is the song in and of itself. So let's say I went around the corner to a karaoke bar. Is there a karaoke bar anywhere around here? I'm so interested. If I went around to a karaoke bar around here and did a cover of Someone Like You, for example, XL Recordings are not making any money from that because it's not that recording of that song. What publishing is here for and what the PRS is here for is to make sure that if I were, for whatever reason, to do a version of Someone Like You, the songwriter Adele and their publishers are making income from that. Now, the PRS do an utterly wonderful job of making sure that all of the songwriters who are on all the songs in the UK are registered and making sure that their money is coming back to them. Now, what a publisher's primary role for, especially somewhere like Centric as well, is to make sure that you are getting that income no matter where you are in the world. So if you're a member of the PRS, for example, what they'll be doing is making sure that you're on like this, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong here, a mega database, which will basically say, if this song is played in the UK at this point of time, you should be getting income for it. Now, in the wonderful world of like streaming and the way that the world works now, everything is international. So it is super, super beneficial for you, everyone in this room, to make sure that your work's basically registered at the equivalence of the PRS internationally as well. If you look at your streaming, for example, if you've put stuff onto Spotify, it is highly, highly unlikely that you're just being streamed in the UK. You may be streamed internationally as well. And if you start getting picked up from like radio stations, or if you go on tours in Europe and things like that, it's really, really beneficial to make sure that your works are actually registered at the equivalence of the PRS, and that is what a publisher will do for you. So, for example, in Germany, there's the version of the PRS is called Gamer. In the US, there's BMI. There are so many acronyms internationally. They are obsessed with acronyms. But what a publisher will do is make sure that you're basically everywhere. So you're not just at the PRS, you're in all these other countries as well. What a publisher will also do if you're on the admin side of things, and Dan, if you want to touch base on the MCPS side of things, you're more than welcome to, is look after your mechanical rights as well. So in the world of like music compositions and the publishing side of things, there's actually two sides to it which are super, super important to know. So there's the performance royalties, so that's everything that the PRS will look after for you. So every time that there's a public performance of your music, you're getting the money that you should be getting for that. On the other side of things is something called a mechanical royalty. Now, traditionally, these were for any time that any music that was recorded was reproduced. So let's say your music was pressed onto vinyls or CDs or cassettes and things like that. So every time that a record label wanted to sell your music, they would pay a license fee to the MCPS, so the writers on that track would get some income as well, not just the labels, which is, again, beneficial to you as songwriters. Now, in the modern world of mechanical royalties, that also includes things like streaming as well. So every time that your song is streamed, it is creating a mechanical royalty, it is creating a performance royalty. So what a publisher, at the very heart of it, is making sure you're getting all the money that you should be getting for you as songwriters. Alongside that, a lot of publishers as well will want to make sure that they're basically getting the most amount of money as possible for their artists as well. So they may want to look to put your music into the world of synchronization as well, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a bit, which is basically making sure that your music is getting licensed to stuff as well. So the world of sync is anything that you sort of see music to picture. So that can be TV, adverts, video games, etc. If you're hearing music, then it is someone who has put that music onto there, and there'll be a license fee, which allows that to happen as well. Places like Centric and other music publishers really want to make this happen for artists as well, because obviously, one, it's making their artists more money. It can make them, obviously, it will help increase things like profile and things like that. But of course, as music publishers, they are also wanting to make some money as well. So it is basically good for them to be pitching your music to stuff as well, because one, it'll make you money, and obviously it is the music industry, it is the music business, they're wanting to make some money as well. So it's very much there to try and expand the amount of money you as artists should be getting as well. At the very, very heart of it is making sure that your copyrights can be collected on everywhere and anywhere. You're getting everything that you should be getting in, and hopefully building a career to a point where you can hopefully get closer to being full-time musicians as well at the end of it.
Okie dokie. Your contract arrangements are quite unusual or different to a traditional publisher.
Yes.
I was going to ask Dan if he could just give the baseline on a traditional music publishing contract, the term, how long it is, average percentages.
Well, I think Joel's probably better placed to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, so there's in the world of publishing, there's kind of like different types of deal that can exist for artists. So when people think of sort of like traditional music publishing deals, it tends to be that music publishers want to own the copyright, so they will own that publishing copyright for X amount of years. So that can be life of copyright. It can also be to the end of the earth and end of the world as well. So what traditional publishers will do is that they will give artists sometimes like a really big advance for either 3 albums worth of material, for any copyright that they want or any music they're wanting to create at that point of time. And what will happen is slowly but surely an artist will slowly recoup on that advance that's given. So let's say, it'd be nice if I was given £100,000 advance, but let's just say that happens. What would happen is I would then, in return, give the publisher, let's say, life of copyright on 3 albums for that £100,000. Slowly but surely, that money would be recouped. And then at the end of it, you could potentially go into sort of a renegotiation of, actually, I want some of these copyrights back. Or who knows what would happen. They may just decide, like, no, let's just keep it our separate ways, and we'll go into something called an admin deal. Now, what Centric does is an administration deal. So Centric's sort of idea is that we never actually sort of want to own the copyright in and of itself. We just want to make sure that all of your works are adminned correctly, so all of your works are put out internationally. Now, Centric works in a way that we will only make money when you make money, so there's no advance. It's all on like an 80-20 split, so every royalty that comes through to you, you'll be getting 80% of that, and Centric sort of retain 20% of that, and that's all done on a 28-day rolling contract as well. Sorry for just doing the elevator pitch for you all there as well. So the reason that we want to do that is try and make it as sort of flexible and artist-friendly as possible, reason, giving you as artists or managers or wannabe publishers in the room as well the opportunity to leave if you think a better option is coming for you. Because let's say that you are in a deal where you've signed away your copyrights for a long time, you have no flexibility over what you want to do with your career then, for example. You may be put in a 3-album deal, you've been given a small advance, but in the meantime, you've blown up, but you're kind of a bit stuck in what you want to do. Having someone like Centric behind you gives you the opportunity to just come and go when you want. So we were looking after sort of Little Sims up until recently as well. She was on just this 28-day rolling deal as well, because basically she was slowly but surely building her career, making sure she's getting all the finance that she should be getting until that point. Then a major came in and gave her, I don't know how much money, but a boatload of cash to be like, hey, we can really help sort of push your career even further. And we're like, brilliant. We were so excited for her to sort of be in that position of being able to get a major deal as well. But in the meantime, artists and songwriters should still be getting their copyrights protected and getting all the money that they should be getting as well. I mean, we've had people who have been on this 28-day deal, they've left to go and sign a major deal, so they've given up their rights for 10 or so years and then come back to Centric because they sort of preferred that flexibility of being able to sort of dictate the way that they want their career to look as well. The way that sort of Centric looks at things as well is that we'll only rep things that you want us to look after as well. So there's nothing stopping you signing with another publisher for just an album. We can look after back catalogue. If there's just one song that you're working on for someone else and you're just like, right, I just want a little bit of representation here, we can do that for you as well. So the whole idea is you're not signing your life away, but you're getting what you are owed and what you ought to be getting as well. And I think that's a really, really important place to be as artists and to know is that there are solutions for you to get what you are owed and you're not having to give everything away, because I think we're in a period of time where it's so important for artists. I think we're at a really good point now to sort of strengthen their knowledge of how all of this works, so you don't end up in deals that you shouldn't be going into at the wrong times as well. So having someone who's got sort of like a more flexible deal for you means that you can get what you're owed. You're not stopping anyone from coming in, having a deal with you. And hopefully alongside it, you can start getting some syncs and things like that and helping to build your career as well.
Okie dokie. Are there advantages of writers and composers joining PRS in their own right before they get a publishing deal?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So kind of my job isn't doing a sales pitch trying to encourage everybody to join PRS. We only want you to join PRS when you're going to earn money out of us. So it costs, if you're under 25, it costs £30 to join. It's a one-off fee for life. If you're over 25, it's £100 one-off fee. Again, that's it for life. You'll never pay us another penny, but I still only encourage people to join when they're going to earn at least that amount of money back from us. So if you're getting radio play, TV play, or being played live, it's one of the first points people join us, because if you are playing live, say you play next door at the parish, you'll be getting royalties, even if you haven't got a publishing deal. So any live show you play in the UK, as long as the venue is licensed by PRS, you can collect royalties through PRS for that. So that's primarily why a lot of people join, because that's where you start, before you start recording stuff, before getting on the radio play, you're playing live. So yeah, 100% I would advise people to join PRS before they've got a published deal, as long as they're going to earn at least that amount of money back. So PRS Music is actually two separate companies that we kind of talked about a little bit already. There's the PRS side of the business, which is Performing Rights Society. So that is radio play, TV, live, public performances, but also streams and downloads. That's a society most people will need to join. There's another society who I also work for called MCPS, the Mechanical Copyright Protection Society, that deals with mechanical royalties. So traditionally CDs, vinyls, but also streams and downloads as well. It's a bit more nuanced as to whether you need to join MCPS. If you have a publishing deal, you don't normally need to join MCPS, because your publisher will collect 100% of the mechanical royalties onto you and pay a percentage on, depending on your deal. So Centric would pay you the 80%, they'd keep their 20%. The PRS side of the business doesn't allow a publisher to take more than 50% of the income if you're signed up with PRS or different performing rights organisations. So even if you do sign the worst publishing deal in the world, and I've seen some horrendous ones, you're still guaranteed to get 50% of the income directly from PRS. So that's another really good reason to join PRS directly. Also, it makes you eligible for certain funds. So we have two kind of charity arms. We have the PRS Members Fund that helps members when they're having a hard time financially or mental health issues. During COVID, a lot of our members were really badly hit by COVID, with all their plans completely in ruins. So if you're ineligible, if you're a member of PRS, we gave out over £2.4 million in grants to our members to help them get through that tough time. And we also have the PRS Foundation, which is the UK's leading funder of new music and talent development across all genres. And you basically have to be a member to be eligible for some of the bigger funds as well. And were you going to ask me about that later, or should I just go off on one about it?
No, go off on it, because
Yeah.
you just mentioning it is like, oh God,
Yeah.
I haven't got a question about that.
So there's about a dozen different grant schemes you can apply for the PRS Foundation. Ones you don't have to be a member of are ones like the Open Fund and Women Make Music. These are grants up to £5,000 for specific projects. So if you've been offered the opportunity to go on like a support tour, you realise you're going to lose £4,000 going across and playing that thing, we can basically help with that shortfall. Or you could have like recording costs, mixing costs, promotion costs, and we can fund you for that as well. What other funds are there? International Showcase Fund. So if you're ever offered the opportunity to go to a showcase festival overseas, something like South by Southwest, Reeperbahn, Eurosonic, again, you can lose a lot of money going over to play those shows for free to showcase your music. So we can help fund you to go over there. And the biggest fund is the PPL Momentum Fund, which grants up to £15,000 for artists at a crucial tipping point in their career. So you do need to be a member of PRS to be eligible for that. you need to have a bit of a team around you. It can't just be like your first relief. You have to kind of build up a bit of momentum. So that's another really good reason to join. And also because we're in Kirklees, Momentum Fund also occasionally has ring fence funds for certain regions. So South Yorkshire, Merseyside, Wales, and a couple of others I don't think have been announced yet, so I can't say. So basically being here is quite useful because you are eligible for one of those regional funds as well, where 3 people are kind of guaranteed to get funded from the area.
I think just like on the funding side of things, it's one of the really important things to note with it as well is that and this may not be the same, essentially do similar things as well, that you're not expected to then pay that money back either. This is just money to help support your career as well. The only thing that you sort of have to give that is the time of writing an application form for it. These things are super, super competitive, so like never go in sort of like with the expectation of, right, I know that there's this £10,000 set aside, therefore I'm going to get it. But the huge benefit of sort of getting to a point where you may receive some funding is that allows you to still have complete control over sort of what you're doing musically and creatively as well. You haven't got a label manager or a publishing manager being like, I want this to be more XYZ, I want this to come out in the next X amount of time. That money is there for you to just go and create and do what you want to go and do, or go out on tour as well and give you all the control still as well. So these things are hugely beneficial. So PRS do them. Have a look at Help Musicians as well. They do some wonderful funds as well, which are open like all year round as well. So if you're looking for financial options and you're not really wanting to sign away sort of like your master rights or your publishing rights as well, funding opportunities are something which I really do can't stress enough, look into them. Well.
I also throw Arts Council England into the fold as well, because a lot of people don't think of the Arts Council when it comes to music. So it can actually be a lot easier to get funded through them than through the PS Foundation and Help Musicians, because there's less competition, and they funded some really great things recently that I've been made aware of.
Have you ever done an Arts Council application?
I have done lots of Arts Council applications. About a third of my role is working for PRS. About a third of my role is helping people with applications for funding, even though it's not my job. And another third is talking to people about PPL, who I haven't talked about yet, but I can do, because people can constantly get PRS and PPL confused. And I spend about a third of my job helping people with PPL related issues, even it's a completely separate company to PRS.
I didn't know if I wanted to punish you with PPL.
I do think it's worth knowing about, though, in the grand scheme of sort of the music landscape and how it does have a separation to what publishing. I mean, do you want to? Do you want to take it?
So Joel kind of explained earlier about the different copyrights. So every time you record the song, there's the 2 separate copyrights there. There's a copyright in the actual underlying composition, the song rights, or the publishing rights as it's known. There's also the separate copyright in the actual sound recording itself, known as the master rights. If you're speaking to someone really old school, the phonographic rights. So basically PRS takes care of collecting the money for the song rights. So every time a song is played on the radio in the UK, PRS will collect royalties and pay it to the publishers and the songwriters. But there's another society in the UK called PPL, who we work quite closely with, but they are a different company. I don't work for them, but I will help you with your queries because I get a lot of queries about them. Basically, they take care of the recording rights side of things. So every time you played on the radio, PRS will pay you as a songwriter, PPL will pay you as a performer, and they also pay the rights holder as well. And I speak to a lot of artists who don't realise they're also a rights holder. So if you haven't got a label, the label don't own the recording rights, chances are that I can again go on to the grey areas of who owns the recording rights or master rights. But increasingly, I'm speaking to a lot of artists who are also the rights holder. They've paid for it themselves. They've made the arrangements themselves. They're distributing through a digital distributor, such as like DistroKid, CD Baby, Believe, Ditto Music. So basically, you can get paid as a rights holder and also a performer by PPL. So this is being recorded, isn't it? So go on their websites and use their very easy application process where you'll be asked to fill in like US tax forms and learn lots of acronyms. But it is free to join PPL, so definitely do join PPL as well.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just another thing that's good for your bank balance as well. That like if you have written on a song, brilliant, you'll be getting income from that. But if you've performed on the song as well and it's getting radio plays as well, brilliant, you'll be getting more income for that as well. So it's worth doing. Again, the PPL do have people that you can speak to help them through the application process as well. But it is worth doing. It is free. It's extra income as well. I think it's one thing that is also worth noting as well, that if you're wanting your music placed onto things like UK television shows as well, you have to have your PPL sorted as well. Dan, you agreeing with me by shaking your head then, or disagreeing?
Because recently we got through one of my worst parts of the year, which is when Love Island is on TV.
Which is one of our favourite times of the year.
Not only because Love Island's on TV and it's all my social feeds are, but also because I get emails from bands and from managers at 11 o'clock before going, ITV want to use my track, but we're not members of MCPS, we're not published, we're not signed up with PPL, can you get us signed up as soon as possible? And I have to do that a lot.
So there's this wonderful thing called the blanket license. So what the blanket license is within the UK, if you want anything to be played on UK television, any of your music, basically your music has to be registered at the PRS, the MCPS, and the PPL. So basically the way that it works is that any UK TV show can pick up and use your music if it's registered in those three places. So the agreement of, yes, you're allowed to use my track is basically the fact that your music is registered in those places. So you wouldn't get an upfront fee for those, but what would happen is that every single time that show is aired, you'll get a PRS royalty, depending on how many people are watching it at that point of time. So using Love Island as an example, when that is on first time round, it's like ITV1 prime time, you'll get more money because there were more viewers watching it at that point of time. Then slowly but surely, when ITV2 do repeats of it, and then there's like a random 3 a.m. showing of Love Island, you'll be getting less royalties from the PRS that time around because less people are watching it. You'll get a one-off fee from the MCPS as well, and a one-off fee from the PPL as well, I believe, on that side of things. So one of the things that a publisher will do for you is, from the off, make sure you are registered at the PRS and the MCPS. It's up to you whether you want to get the PPL done yourselves. Some publishers like Centric can help out on that side of things, but just for the rights holder side of things. So one like the benefits of having a publisher like Centric, for example, is actually giving your music more opportunity to be used as well. One of the big things that Centric do as well is the world of synchronization, which is getting music onto stuff like TV, like Love Island, like all the good stuff, all the good telly. So making sure that your registrations are sorted is super important, because if you put yourself in the shoes of a music supervisor who has sent through like hundreds of tracks from different publishers or different labels and independent artists who have sort of reached out to them, and they say, and you write them an amazing email saying, this music will be perfect for what you're doing. I love the show. I know that you're using music like XYZ. Our music is very, very similar to that. But then they check on PRS, you're not there, or your MCPS registration is not sorted. They'll just easily dismiss it and move on to the next thing. Because the way that the blanket license is set up as well, with any music which is registered to PRS, MCPS, and PPL is available to use, they will quickly move on and find a song within a sort of similar space as well. So do make sure that if you're getting to a point where you're like, why isn't my music being used in XYZ, have a look at the registrations first, because it genuinely might just be that really small, annoying bit of admin that you haven't done that's actually preventing you from getting to that sort of next stage and next step of your career, especially in the sync space as well.
And insofar as PPL, just call Dan.
Don't call PPL, please.
Just call. Yeah, good luck calling PPL. I know on their website they do have videos and lots of documentation on how to fill in their application. So there is support. One of the questions I used to get when I taught, when I was still a tutor, and I was doing about royalties, copyright, publishing, is how much does, say, for instance, a radio airplay of a track? I know it depends on which radio station, obviously, but say if they're lucky enough to get well, BBC Introducing is a good place to start because
Mhm.
most people do sort of, yeah.
So similarly to sort of like when I just briefly spoke about like the television side of things, that the more people who view it, the more you'll get paid. Similarly in the world of radio, the more people who hear it at that point of time, the more you'll get paid as well. So using Radio 2 as an example, that is like the most listened to station in the country. So if you're getting a breakfast play on Radio 2, it can be a good sort of like 90, 100 odd quid from memory. Now the BBC Introducing, again, and sort of like local radio tends to be a smaller amount, and it can range from anything from 50p to a tenner, depending on how many people are actually listening to it at that point in time. Again, if you're going through the world like BBC Introducing as well, what they will do is they will ask for a tune code when you're doing the uploader as well, and this is something that the PRS will sort of generate for you. So there's always like this timeline that I would sort of suggest when going to radio or going to releasing a track, is that before you are pushing it anywhere, make sure it's registered at the PRS or with your publisher, because then come the time that you're actually wanting to put it to the world, give it to BBC Introducing, again, the registration is there. They're not having to chase you. They're not going to look for other music. It's there and done. So my tips would be write the song, agree the splits, register it, record it, get it mastered, get it to your distributors, get it to your label, etc. But from early doors, make sure it's registered at the PRS, because, again, if you want it to go to radio, you're going to need that tune code to get paid. You don't want that money to go missing, because it will go. I mean, what's the timeline at the moment of like how long is royalties just sort of kept at PRS?
3 years.
3 years. So if it's just something that you've never done and you're getting radio plays and things like that, and those radio plays happened 3 years ago, unfortunately that money is now gone. So again, getting into like the habit of write the song, agree the splits, get it registered, just means that you are getting paid from moment one as well. And so the way that I always sort of like look at the radio thing as well is like getting introducing stuff is brilliant, and getting repeat plays is brilliant as well. Are you okay to chat about sort of like census and sampled stations as well, just sort of how that works?
Yeah, so it's kind of Joel described. So radio play is all about audience size, potential audience size. So the bigger the station, the more listeners, the higher royalty rate you'll get. So we have like 3 different times a day weighting. So if you played in the morning, you get a higher rate than you would if you played like at midnight. All the larger stations are paid out on what's called a census basis. So what that means, if you were played, you will get paid. Everything gets reported to us. We pay everything out. So that works for kind of all the national radio stations. It's not always cost effective for us to do that. So say there's a small community radio station, pays a license fee of like 500 quid a year to us. But they use hundreds of thousands of tracks over the course of the year. It would be fractions of pennies per play. So for smaller stations like that, we may only sample them. We'll look at 1 day a month. If you've played on that day, you'll get paid a set amount. If you fell out of the sample days, unfortunately, you won't receive anything. For even smaller stations, particularly a lot of online ones, we may only pay out by analogy, where we don't get any data from them because, again, they may pay us like £100 a year for a license. So we will look at what were the top, what kind of station is it, what were the top tracks or kind of that genre for the last quarter, and they kind of get like an additional supplement payment because of that. So yeah, you're not guaranteed to get paid for every single radio station in play in the country, but the bigger the stations, you will get a significant amount of royalties every single time your music is played. Same applies for kind of TV as well. So if you played on like BBC One in the evening, it's about £90 per minute. So some of the biggest earning members that I deal with are people you've probably never heard of, because they are just composers behind the scene. They are media composers. They write the music for The Apprentice. They write the BBC News music, and they get paid a lot of money every time the music is played. So, yeah. And
do they get a fee as well if they're, or depending on whether it's library music or they've been...
Yeah, so they can, if it's library music, it kind of depend, and also if they've been asked to compose it, then they'll get a compositional fee as well. But they earn very good royalties just from the music being used like every day of the week. Or
so you get on David Attenborough, cha-ching. Get on EastEnders. Written this,
I think kind of thinking about background music is actually quite a salient point as well. That even if you're releasing stuff commercially as well, if you just think about the vast majority of music on television or music in adverts, probably about 70% of them is the instrumental version rather than something with a lyric track as well. So if you're going into the studio, or if you're working with like a producer and you're an MC, make sure that you get the instrumental as well. We've had people lose out on thousands of pounds because a TV show or an advert has come to us and said, like, we want to use this track, have you got an instrumental? And the answer could be no. So every time you go into the studio, get an instrumental version sent as well.
And it's not very punk to say, but also a non-sweary version.
Yeah, exactly. So having clean edits and radio edits as well is also super, super useful to have as well. So there's like 3 versions that I would say. So just like normal track, so 4 in fact. Normal track, instrumental, radio edit, and then instrumentals with like backing vocals like oohs, ahs, na-na-nas, all kept in as well, because those are things that TV shows want to use as well. And having those at the drop of a hat is very, very important as well. Like the universe of sync works at a very, very quick pace. So for example, using like the other week, a track Match of the Day wanted to use a track. We found out about it at about 5:30 the day on the Saturday for it to be used. And obviously we would then have to reach out to the artist, like, do you have the instrumental? Do you have the vocal track? Match of the Day want to use it. And if the answer is no, obviously they'll move on to the next thing very, very quickly as well. So having those things ready to go and to send to people, do it, is what I would say.
Okie dokie. No, I was actually going to sort of talk about advertising, cause, but mainly because I watch linear TV. We do Netflix and we do,
Sure.
you know, but they're all again, we're in that sort of place where they seem to be using old tracks, tracks from the past. And the other thing I noticed, and I know this is sort of more post-COVID, is some of the adverts have been running for years and years, and we're losing out on that new material.
I think that so different music supervisors will want different things, and I think that's something that's always worth noting. So like things like evergreen tracks, so like every Christmas everyone's going to want to use things like It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year and things like that as well. Or if you're John Lewis, a sad acoustic cover of a song by The Prodigy that I was about to say but now won't. So if you are looking at pitching music to music supervisors and to adverts, one of the biggest things I can recommend is pitch it to people that you know are sort of using music in the emerging space or a genre that you are within as well. So again, whatever you think of things like Love Island, Made in Chelsea, etc., they are some of the small pioneers of actually using emerging artists' music. They don't use major artists' music really at all. They're wanting to be the people like, ooh, I sing this track by XYZ on my TV show first. Look at me, I'm smug. So have a look at, if you watch TV, if you watch Netflix as well, and you're watching things and be like, ooh, my music's actually similar to this, I actually like what this TV show is about. It will not take you too long to actually find out who the music supervisor on that show is. Use things like IMDb, the horrible world of LinkedIn, if you're on it on Twitter and Instagram and things like that as well. You will find people who are actually doing stuff within your space, within the world of sync as well. So whilst I agree that some places aren't looking for emerging artists, a lot of places are. So seek them out is what I would say as well. I mean, the world of advertising is quite a strange one for Centric, because you can thank or dislike Centric for bringing the Just Eat theme tune to the world as well. That was something that I did a bespoke creation of. And what they've done as well, so to kind of go on to your point, is there was that, it was used for a year, they saw how it went, saw that it was going well, and then relicensed it as well. So that's something that can happen semi-regularly in sort of like the advertising space. If there's something which clicks, they're obviously going to want to relicense that. And then if you're in that situation as an artist, you're obviously in a stronger place to negotiate that as well, because the music that you have created has brought that company sales. Therefore, you have more rights. Like, actually, we've done X, Y, and Z for you. We'd like some more income for the relicensing of this track.
So, yeah, in respects to that, ballpark on the fee?
Oh, it's a how long is a piece of string question, really. So like and it's all, sorry, it's a lot of that. So in the world of singing, there's a few things that to sort of consider about what fees you could get. So that was like the territory that it's used. So is it just a UK advert? Is it just a Kirklees license? Is it something which is European? How long is the license as well? So is it something that they're just using for 3 days? Is it something that they're going to be using for a year? Is it something which they have the right to use whenever they want, so in perpetuity as well? So the longer the license, realistically, the more you can charge as well, because they're wanting to use your music for a long period of time. The major thing to sort of think about often in the world of licensing as well is also like the size of the artist at that point in time. So brands want to be associated with artists. So again, using an Adele, it is likely that a brand who wants to be associated with Adele would have to charge a lot more because it's Adele. So if you're an emerging artist and you're writing music in a similar space, you can actually put yourself in quite a strong and powerful position of asking for less money than an Adele, for example. But you know that if your music's actually being put on an advert or a TV show, etc., you're actually going to be making PRS royalties every single time that it is aired as well. So it can often be a smart deal to do that, accepting a smaller upfront fee, but knowing that actually the license of this advert is 2 years, you're getting income every single time that it's aired as well. So that's always something to consider.
And that works with those adverts on YouTube as well, those same adverts being... Have we resolved it? Well, I know a few years ago, quite a few years ago, there was a bit of argy-bargy with YouTube and PRS. That's all resolved now, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Where YouTube basically said they didn't need a license, so they basically blocked all music off YouTube for about a month, and we got lots of bomb threats and stuff. So that was fun. But yeah, that's all resolved now. So YouTube's licensed by us. All the big platforms like TikTok's licensed by us. So yeah, you do receive royalties from PRS and MCPS when your music's used on YouTube.
Okay.
It is micropayments though, so don't be expecting to buy that mansion, and like you'll get more money from like the sync fee.
Exactly that. And I think like using things like YouTube and streaming platforms, I can sort of give you a little bit of an idea of sort of like what payment looks like there. So let's say you get 1 million streams for one of your songs on Spotify. Like all in all, there's probably about £5,000 of income that's going to come through there for that 1 million streams. Now, 80% of that, so £4,000 will be for the master rights. So that will come through from your label or your distributor, so about £4,000. The publishing side of things for you as a songwriter will be the other £1,000 of that as well. And so yeah, just as sort of like an idea of what that kind of looks like may be interesting for you.
Yeah, and we split that, normally flows to us, and we split that 50-50 between PRS and MCPS because it's part of a performance, part of mechanical. So if you are just signed up with PRS and you're not published, you do need to make sure you sign up with MCPS as well, because I speak to a lot of emerging artists who aren't MCPS members and they lose out on a lot of money because they're not covered by mechanicals because they're not published and they're not members of MCPS. So I have a lot of conversations with artists saying you need to sign up with MCPS because you're getting hundreds of thousands of streams and it'll quickly pay for itself.
Yeah. And then they've stepped into that realm of self-publishing. Yeah. Okay. And of course it is another £100 for the MC.
Yeah. So again, I don't hugely encourage people to join that unless we kind of do the maths and we go, yeah, it's quickly going to pay it back.
Are there any opportunities of improving like the Spotify revenues and the streaming revenues? And
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, to be honest. That is.
Well, I was reading the thing today that basically Spotify are saying they're going to put up their rates soon because everyone's been paying $9.99 for like a decade, and you look at the price of everything else. Every time I buy a pint or get a coffee, I cry a little at the moment.
Yes,
how much it costs, and it's kind of ridiculous that you can get all the music, pretty much all the music in the world ever for £10 a month. And it's gone up other places. It's going to go up. That's going to help. There are a lot of I can literally talk about this for about 2 hours, but I'm not going to bore everyone to death. But yeah, there's lots of really interesting things going on at the moment. Lots of different discussions about how to improve it. Like, this isn't a PRS point of view. This is my own point of view. Yeah. Like, at the moment, streaming's all paid out on a revenue share basis. So I pay my £10 a month. I pretty much just listen to like hardcore and punk and metal, and all pretty much 90% of my money will not go to those artists. It'll go to Adele, it'll go to Taylor Swift and stuff like that. I very much like the idea of like a more user-centric approach where the music that you listen to goes to the artist that you listen to. Yeah, again, that isn't a PRS position, it's my personal position. I think that's some platforms are exploring that, and I'd gladly move my subscription to any platform that kind of adopts that, to know that my money is going to the people I actually listen to and the people I like.
So be aware if you're using Spotify, that's how it works. And if you've got your music on Spotify, that's how it works.
Yeah, I'm not going to go off on one.
No,
No.
I was about to start talking about consumer habits. That'd be very boring. But now that we have access to everything all the time for £10, that is insane.
Yeah.
It is absolutely insane. I remember the glory days of going to HMV and getting 2 CDs for £10 and thinking that was the greatest moment of my life. But now having, well, that's more than 2 CDs. That's a lot of CDs that I have access to now. Yeah, I think we're very used to paying a little for a lot.
Yeah. Has anyone got any questions?
So 99% of places that I know of that have live music are licensed by us. If we're getting reporting from people that are saying that, like, we get lots of reporting that this venue, lots of people are performing it and it's not licensed, we'll use it as a licensing lead and we'll attempt to get the venue licensed. It isn't a quick process, so unfortunately, like, we can't guarantee you royalties. Like, we will try and get them licensed. We'll try and backdate it to get your royalties. But speaking from experience of speaking to people, it can take a lot of time, unfortunately. Yeah. Sorry, can I just talk about live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was going to actually move on to that.
Oh, cool. So as I kind of said, 99% of places should be licensed by PRS. I'd be interested to know which ones aren't. I can have a chat to you after. Not that I'm going to send anyone after them, just curiosity, because I'm really sad.
Imagine how unintimidating it would be if us two knocked on the door of that venue.
I have a interesting, a funny story about that, but I'll, if we've got time at the end, I'll say that. Just because I'm a gig geek and I like to know all the venues in the regions when I do talks, I can personalise it. Yeah, so we kind of have different schemes depending on the size of the venue. So we have a thing called the gigs, clubs and small venue scheme. So kind of pubs, clubs that have shows on, but it's not primarily what they do. We pay out of about £9 across the show. So if you're playing like 10 shows, you're the sole person that sends in a set list, that's about 90 quid you'll get. When you're playing bigger venues, PRS takes 4.2% of the box office at every single show in the UK and pays that to the songwriters on the bill. Both of those are in addition to any money you get for playing the show. So whether you played the show for free, you got paid 50 quid to support someone, you got paid 10 grand to like headline the Peace Hall, you're still going to get paid this money. So I do speak to a lot of managers again who build this into their costings of the tour. So I was literally speaking to someone last week who just got offered this really big support slot, but they were getting paid 50 quid a show, and they were like, can you try and work out what the PRS is going to be, because are we actually going to make any more money from this tour? Because for the bigger shows, I said it's a 4.2% of the box office, then we split it 80% to the headline act support songwriters, then 20% between the support acts. You kind of work out what you're going to get. For music festivals, again, we take a percentage of the box office and we kind of work it out on the basis of how long you played and what stage you're on. So if you're headlining Glastonbury, playing for 2 hours, you're going to be getting lots of money. Whereas if you're opening up one of the smaller stages, playing for 20 minutes or so, you'll still get a decent wedge, but it won't be anywhere near what the headline act does. So this can be like a really, really good money earner, because it's stuff you're doing anyway. You're playing shows. Just make sure you log them with us. So I always say, like, every month, every quarter, just make sure you've listed all your shows. For gigs and club shows, you've got up to a year to put in a claim. And then for bigger shows, you've got up to 3 years. International shows, generally, it's 3 years, but I always say it can change from country to country. So places like America, it has to be within like 6 months. So just get in a habit of regularly submitting your set list to us. It's like It's literally just the date, the venue, the set list. Once you've done it once, you can save that set list and reapply it. So I do it for lots of my mates, and it takes me about 30 seconds to submit a claim now. So yeah, get in a habit of doing that, because it can be a really good money earner for you.
Nice one.
You're also just like not upsetting anyone by claiming those as well. That money has been set aside for you to go and collect as well. So like a semi-regular conversation I have with artists who are first starting up and doing things like, even like things like open mics at venues as well. There's still money out there to go and get if you're doing original material that we'll stop getting gigs if we're like chasing these venues for money. That money has been set aside and already paid. So go and get it. Otherwise, it'll just sit there. And then obviously after 3 years, farewell to that money. So go and get it. Just do it.
A lot of bands do the easy route where there's 4 of us, whoever, doesn't matter who really wrote the basis of it, we'll just split it 4 ways. Other bands don't do that, where they'll be like, no, you can do it on a song by song basis, where like, no, I wrote 80, you wrote 10, you wrote 10, we're splitting it this way, this next track. You can do it on a song by song basis. And yeah, it's very interesting to see how some artists do that. Like, I was looking at like the latest Beyonce album and looking at the amount of songwriters on that. And some of the tracks have got like 22 songwriters. Like, I also get people asking me like, oh, why do you pay the songwriters? Surely it's the artists. And then I was looking at like Dua Lipa's tour, and I because I'm sad, I did the maths, and there's like 68 different songwriters who contributed to a set list. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But also like if you've written on things like that, you should be getting income from that, and that is the point of PRS and getting things published as well. That if you're in a fortunate enough position, if you're writing for people like Dua Lipa, getting your 2% on it, 2% of a worldwide tour is still an insane amount of income that you should be getting. So it's well worth doing. I think it's one of those things as well in like when we say like songwriting as well, I think people can often sort of think about it in just sort of a way of like, oh, it's someone with an acoustic guitar, someone like the sort of like traditional band view of songwriting. But if you're creating anything which is an original material to that song, then you are a songwriter on it as well. So if you work in sort of like the electronic music space as well, and you're sort of like, or you're a beat maker as well, you are a songwriter, and there is PRS income to go out and get as well. So providing that you're creating something original, you are a songwriter. Go and collect your money.
I said it's a one-off fee, that £100, so it's not a yearly thing. So you're not going to lose money every year if you're not earning that amount. We actually introduced a tool on the website where basically when you go to apply, you can basically do various, basically says how much radio you play, how many live shows you play in, and you can kind of twiddle about with it, and it basically says, yeah, it's worth you joining, or no, it's not joining. So how old are you? 20. Oh, so you just missed out on the £30 under 25s, but yeah, generally it's when you're confident you're going to earn at least that £100 back.
I think one thing that I would say as well, so like using Centric as an example, you do not have to be a member of the PRS to sign up for Centric, but we will register your works at the PRS, so you can still actually go and get your income up until the point that you're earning £100, say, and then you can go and join. So it's a very subtle difference, but basically all we'll do is we'll register your tracks as a non-member registration. So all that will happen is Centric will collect all of the money on your behalf. So as Dan was saying earlier, usually it's a 50-50 split. So like the songwriter will get 50%, the rest of the money is sent to the publisher, and then whatever term that you've agreed on, the publisher will send you out money. If you're not a member of the PRS, the publisher will register it. They will just collect 100% of it for you and then send you out the money. So we have a plethora of artists who are still not quite sure yet if they're going to make that 100 quid back or make 100 quid back for the MCPS, but they want to make sure that they're getting the income that they should be getting. And again, quick Centric plug, that's on a 28-day rolling contract, so you could leave when you want. Brilliant.
So I'd be happy to plug Centric, because you can get tied up for 5 years on a publishing contract, and and they want, like you were saying earlier, they want your copyright for as long as they possibly can for the universe, just in case your track gets played on Mars. You're not collecting yet from Mars.
No.
See what Elon has to say about it.
Yeah, see what Elon has to say.
Do you want to talk about the signing up process as a publisher at the PRS? What I would say is that if you want to sort of be a publisher for like global collection, it is supremely expensive. So what Centric does, for example, is we are a member of every single version of the PRS and MCPS internationally, all of which have fees that we have to pay to be able to be members of those places as well. So it's highly advantageous to sort of like have someone who is like a sub-publisher for you, for example. So you could be the publishing entity and then working with Eccentric or someone else to sort of do the rest of it for you, so you're still like the named person on the publishing registrations is an option as well. But you can set up as a publisher on the PRS as well.
You can set up as a sole trader, just you doing it yourself part-time. Basically, you just have to meet certain criteria. A lot of people get advised to set up a publishing company when they don't need to set up a publishing company. If you're self-published, you're doing it yourself, you don't need to set up a publishing company. You just join PRS and MCPS as a writer, and you'll collect all the royalties you would as a publisher. It costs £400 to join PRS as a publisher, another £400 to join MCPS. So it'd be 800 quid in total. And I have a lot of conversations with people saying, don't set that up. A lot of information about how the music industry works is written by Americans. Apologies if there's any Americans in the room. But the way it works in America is a lot different to over here. So I had a conversation again earlier this week with an artist who's basically said, you have to set up a publishing company because like the US performing rights organizations pay half the money to the writer, half the money to a publishing company, and their label insisting you need to set up a publishing company. But you don't, like, and if you're self-published, you can just pay to join MCPS and you'll collect all the money. You don't need to waste money spending 800 quid joining as a publisher.
Because, of course, you collect internationally as well, don't you?
Yeah, so we've got reciprocal agreements in over 150 different countries around the world. So, yeah, if your music is used overseas, the Overseas Society over there will identify you a member of PRS and they'll pay the money on to us and we'll pay on to you. It can be very beneficial to work with someone like Cenship because they can make sure your songs are correctly registered, so they can identify that a lot quicker, more efficiently, and get you the money a lot quicker. So unfortunately, it isn't automatic, like what we call back claims. So 9 times out of 10, when people ask me why they haven't got paid for something, it's exactly that scenario. People have joined and they haven't registered the works, or they've registered them too late. So we generally pay royalties about 4 to 6 months after they've been used. So say you played on the radio tonight, you'll probably expect the money in our October distribution, and you have to register the work at least 2 months in advance of that distribution to get paid. Anything after that, it kind of isn't rerun. I'm going to give a really boring explanation of secondary invoicing, but stuff like Spotify and stuff, we do rerun it and re-invoice them and stuff, but stuff like radio, TV, it's basically just sitting there waiting for you to tell us, oh, I've registered the song now, can you pay me? And I'll manually work it out and pay you the money. But yeah, it isn't automatic. You need to register works and you need to email and tell us to sort it out.
I think having a publisher working with people like sync agents as well can be sort of like a beneficial first step, because they've already sort of got the contacts within the industry and in the space and may be able to help you out there as well. As I said as well, just trying to find out who music supervisors are or creative directors at these companies are is a really good step to do there as well. I think in a lot of ways it's just shoot your shot on that side of things. But what I would say is make sure you're ready as well. So don't send through like demos, make sure it's mixed, it's mastered, it is finished. Music supervisors get way, way, way too much music. So if you send them through a demo, it's the first time that they've received an email from you, they'll probably just dismiss it. And then if you email again like 6 months later with a finished article, say, well, you wasted my time 6 months ago, why am I going to listen to this now? It sounds very fickle, but the amount of music that they get all the time, making that sort of first impression count is really, really important. So do your research. A publisher can look at helping you out, but what I would say is if you're going into the world looking for sync and brand partnerships, these things can take a long time. It's never guaranteed. Alongside funding, one of the most competitive parts of the industry, as you know, everyone wants that. It can be such like a benefit to you as an artist as well to get that to happen, so everyone's aiming for it. So be patient, wait until your music's done and it's right, and go for it. Why not?
Basically, PRS and MCPS are effectively merged. I can give you a history lesson, but in 1997 they became the MCPS PRS Music Alliance, and they worked together. Our old CEO suggested that with PPL in, I think it's like a music week thing, and completely burnt bridges with PPL for a while. But yeah, it would make sense. I don't think there's hardly any around the world where the recording rights and the performing right, and the song rights are working together. But yeah, it would. We do a lot of stuff together. Again, our databases of works are now linked to their database of recordings. We do a lot of the licensing together. So places like this place is now licensed by PPL PRS Limited. So all the licensing is done in one place, and the money is just like divided between the two. But yeah, it would be simpler, but it's not going to happen very soon.
It's historical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because back in the day, it was predominantly record labels that benefited from PPL until Musicians Union. Did you join in with Musicians Union to kick off on PPL? Was it just the MU?
I think it was just the MU.
Just the MU. Finally got the government of the day to recognise performers and they're deserving of receiving PPL, and then everything changed. But record companies used to control that, and they were the major record companies who controlled the industry.
Yeah, I think that's some of
back
it.
In '96.
Because some of it is just like the way of looking at it is because there is sort of like the two distinct copyrights within music of the master copyrights and the publishing copyrights being two sort of distinct entities that obviously the PPL looking after, generally speaking, the master rights and the performers, PRS, MCPS looking after the writers on the track. Those two things are not necessarily the same as well, so it could become very mucky if it was just under one unit.
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
mucky enough at the moment. Explaining the difference between us. So being on one website, one platform, get very, very mucky.
Mm-hmm.
But where there is commonality, you've already got.
There's definitely streamlining cost savings and where we can.
Yeah.
So it's 80-20 in favour of yourself. So for any royalty that's collected for you, we'll send you 80 and we'll retain 20% on that. Similarly, it's like Dan was saying, there's always like a right time to join a publisher and to have Centric on your side as well, or a different publisher. So I would say if you register it at Centric, we'll register it at the PRS on your behalf. So what you need to do is when you're registering stuff on Centric, make sure that your PRS CAE number is associated to you as a writer. If you then submit your song details to Centric, we will send it to PRS, and then it will appear on your PRS account because we've linked to your CAE number. So just do it the once, and we'll sort the rest.
Same with set lists as well. Report them through Centric, so it gets reported to us. Because if you're doing it through the PRS website, you, as a writer, you can't add the publisher to the work, so you'll essentially be cutting Centric out. So, do it through Centric.
All right, everyone. Dan, thank you very much. Joel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope you've all found it useful. Can we give these gentlemen a round of applause?